As you know, if you saw the flyer opened up, the U.S. has promised to give Israel $30 billion over the next 10 years for military equipment. And our panel this evening is going to concentrate on what we could do here in the United States, here in our own city, if we got to keep that $30 billion. And I plan to introduce each one with the bio, the short one they have written right before they speak. But I would just like to say briefly now, this is Sister Jean, this is Mustafa, and this is Josh. And I'll be reading their bio. We will have a Q&A, question and answers afterwards. And I'm saying this to defend myself against our panel members. I have been asked to limit them to 10, 12, 15 minutes. If I let them go over, feel free to raise your hand and I will stop them. Not really, but I know it is going to be interesting and you are interested and you care. And that's what brings us together. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Sister Jean. It is Jean Christensen. She is a Sister of Mercy and a member of the Sisters of Mercy Midwest Community Justice Team. And the mission of the Sisters of Mercy is to women who commit our lives in deepening our relationship with God and serving God's people, especially the sick, poor, uneducated, and in any way wounded by our contemporary society. Our mission includes helping people overcome obstacles that keep them from living full and dignified lives. We use our resources to serve those most in need. This includes the economically poor of the world, especially women and children, immigrants, and persons who are victims of violence, discrimination, or racism. And we have a particular concern about the earth and environment. The justice team that Sister Jean is on educates, provides information and resources to encourage others to get involved in serving those in need and in doing legislative advocacy to try and change what causes the problems from which people suffer. And she will be talking about her ministry of peace and justice. Sister Jean.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here and have to tell you how I got here. I live in Kansas City, and I happen to be out in Washington, D.C. with 11 other Sisters of Mercy who do justice work. And instead of going up to the Hill to do yet another day of advocacy and legislative lobbying, we went to visit the State Department and the Institute for Policy Studies, where guess who I met? Phyllis Bennis, who said, "Oh, we're going to be in Kansas City." I said, "Here's my card." I didn't figure I'd ever hear from anybody, but I did. So I'm here and I'm happy to be here. The Sisters of Mercy are committed to justice. There are about 2,000 of us in the United States. And there are also several of us in Central, South America, and the Caribbean. And each of these communities of us, there are 12 of us within the national setting who do peace and justice. It's our full-time ministry. And Janet, when she introduced me, talked about the 6 critical areas that we focus on. It's not all we do, but we had to focus it or we couldn't possibly get the work done. So it's poverty, women and children, the environment, immigration, nonviolence, and racism. Within the national body, there are 5 communities in the United States and then our CASA community. I belong to the Western community. It's called the West Midwest. And we are the only community in the United States that has 3 justice coordinators. And part of that's because of the commitment of our leadership and because of our geography. We go from Detroit to the West Coast. So trying to do justice that way, we do a lot of it virtually, and we do a certain amount of traveling. The other thing I'd say about the Sisters of Mercy, not only do we have a commitment of personnel in the work of justice, we also have a commitment of financial resources in it. Our Midwest community just did about 35 grants to people doing ministries in any one of those 6 areas. So we have a serious commitment, but what I wanted to talk about more tonight is what we're actually doing here in the Kansas City metropolitan area. Historically, there used to be about 40 or 50 of us down here. Today, there are 8 of us. So we continue to do the ministry in spite of the diminishing numbers. And there are actually 4 things I want to talk about. Well, 5 things. It just grew the other day. One of the things that I do is I'm editor of the Kansas City Olive Branch. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's a virtual peace and justice community. Because we knew there was going to be a gap in somebody being sort of the resource bank for all the communities around here. So we post calendars, so anybody who has activities you want the peace and justice community to know about, if you get it to me, I get it on the calendar. And then we also have articles, and it's posted once a month, and anybody who subscribes to it gets 1 email a month. And that's telling you that it's coming. The only exception to that was last month when our beloved Chris Cheatham died, and we wanted people to know when the funeral would be. So I have information. I never travel without the handouts. So that's one of the things here. The other thing here is something called Mercy Embraces Sudan. One of our sisters spends a lot of time in Sudan, and we're doing a fundraiser for her in August. And it's one of our associate members who's organizing it. So part of my thinking about this was if we had more money, we could do more, not only with just these projects, but with the other 20-some that we are funding. Another project that we fund in the Kansas City area is one called the Center for Spirit at Work. And our target audience is the corporate world, because we feel that those are the people who need to hear the message in order to help us make systemic change in our city. And one of the things they do is a monthly session for people who are either under or unemployed to assist them in securing what they need, resume writing and what have you. So that's one of the things that we do. The other thing that I'm involved with is called Amethyst Place, and I serve in an advisory capacity to them. They're a transitional program for women who have been chemically addicted. And these women have been through rehab. They have either gotten their children back or are in the process of getting them back or are pregnant. And they can stay in the transitional program for up to 2 years. And then they do have the option of their space moving to what they call alumni housing. And that allows them to have safe housing that they can afford, and then they do not have to go back to the areas from which they came. And that group is 10 years old. It's a very solid, very stable group. And I did bring some brochures about our Midwest Justice team. Part of what we're trying to educate our people to understand is it's not just those justice people out there. It's the responsibility of all of us. And it's part of our spirituality, in particular, our spirituality as Sisters of Mercy. And the last project I want to talk about is called the Justice Project, and its subgroup is called the Willow Tree. The Justice Project, it was begun by a woman who is a survivor of prostitution. And she not only survived it,